There's still music? There's music playing. Hi. Hi, everyone.
Good morning.
We just came here today to model for you our Verchurch merch. Our Verchurch merch. Verchurch merch or Verchurch merch. Make your friends read it, see what they say. It's fun. Hi.
Let's create some easy silence.
That seems about right. When the calls and conversations, accidents and accusations, messages and misperceptions paralyze my mind. Buses, cars, and airplanes leaving, burning fumes of gasoline. Everyone is running, and I come to find a refuge in the easy silence that you make for me. It's okay when there's nothing more to say to me. In the peaceful quiet you create for me, and the way you keep the world at bay for me. Monkeys on the barricade warning us to back away. They form commissions, try to find the next one they can crucify. When anger plays in every station, answers only make more questions. I need something to believe in, breathing sanctuary in the easy silence that you make for me. It's okay when there's nothing more to say to me. In the peaceful quiet you create for me, and the way you keep the world at bay for me. The way you keep the world at bay. Children lose their youth too soon. Watching war made us immune. I've got all the world to lose. I just wanna hold on to the easy silence that you make for me. It's okay when there's nothing more to say to me. In the peaceful quiet you create for me, and the way you keep the world at bay for me. In the easy silence that you make for me. It's okay when there's nothing more to say to me. In the peaceful quiet you create for me, and the way you keep the world at bay for me. The way you keep the world at bay for me. The way you keep the world at bay.
Till the vapor of it all, it's a chasing of the wind, the substance of the form, so pale and thin. Let the veil of earth be stretched again. Oh, Trees clap their hands for you. Oceans, they dance for you. Heaven tones the hearts of men. We can feel it from within. The beauty of it all, the mystery, the swelling of our voice, a rising sea. Holy, and all behold the holy. Trees clap their hands for you. Oceans, they dance for you. You are holy, infinite and holy. Billion suns rise for you. Clouds paint the skies for you. Mountains stand tall for you. Valleys bow down to you. Everything rising to sing all our songs to you. Holy, the impossible and holy. Kings become fools for you, kingdoms to rose for you. Vapor finds ground in you, music finds sound in you. Everything rising, everything rising. Everything rising, everything rising. Oh, 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 come like dawn, like grace, like sunlight. Bring this world to life. Come like rain, like breath, like springtime. Bring this world to life.
I think I'm good. Hi, good morning. I am not Huck and Fable, so there's way less cute happening. No kids here today. They needed and wanted a break, which is lovely and beautiful. But I did want to come and say hi to our Sojo kids. And mostly I just wanted to tell you that I love and miss you. But I also have a message for you this morning and an invitation. So last week when Huck and Fable were here, they gave you a message and talked about how you have a special power inside of you. They said it doesn't come from some magical place up above. You have a special power that lives right here inside of you, and it is your voice. We talk about that at Sojourn all the time, how kids have just as much of a voice as the adults. And I realized I spend more time reminding the adults of this than I do the kids. And I think That's probably accurate, important. Adults need reminding that kids' voices matter more than kids need reminding of that. But I did want to take a moment this morning to remind you kids that your voice matters. So I want to say one quick word about power, because I said you have a special power inside of you. Here's the thing about power. We get really confused about power in our world, because there's different kinds. And a lot of times when we hear the word power, we think of the kind of power that's kind of on the outside. The power that's in the world. We think of governments. The president has a lot of power. We think of even teachers and parents. They have a lot of power. Power in terms of the people who make the rules. They tell you how it's going to be and what to do. That kind of power. And there's a lot there. That's powerful when we make the rules and we say how things are going to go. But there's also a power that we all have, and we all equally have that power. The power to make our own decisions, the power of voice, the power of love, the power to create and have our own beautiful life. And sometimes in our world, people who have a lot of that other kind of power, the power to make the rules, sometimes they use that power to squish out the other kind of power, to make it so that power that we all have inside, that some of us don't get to use it or express it as much. And I think that happens to kids a lot, because the adults have a lot of that other kind of power. They make a lot of the rules and they say how things are going to be. And so then kids' power gets kind of squished and small. And you can even kind of forget that you have it. And so at Sojourn Grace Collective, we try to remind ourselves that kids' power is alive and just as important. Jesus, that teacher we talk about a lot who taught love on earth, how to be love on earth, he said, "Let the children come to me. And if you want to know how to change the world, listen to what the kids have to say." Now, that same message that Jesus had way back then, thousands of years ago, today that would sound like this: let the kids have the microphones, right? That's why we give Huck and Fable the microphones. Let the kids sit at the table when we're having important conversations, when we're trying to figure out how to make the rules and say how things are going to be with that kind of power. Give some of that power to the kids. And so we try to do that at Sojourn, but I think we can do even better. So here's my invitation to you this morning. If you have something you want to share in this space, we can't be together right now, but you've seen Huck and Fable sit up here and talk to you and share meditations and poems. Remember that day when Fable picked a poem out of a book and she shared it? Because that was what she wanted to say. That wasn't me. I want you to have that opportunity. So if you have something to say, something you want to share, a message, a poem, a quote, anything you want to share in this space, can you tell your mom and dad to send that to me? And I would love to make sure that your voice is heard in this space, because you have great power, and it matters that we take that into consideration when we make the rules and decide how things are going to be with that kind of power, okay? Send me your thoughts. Send me what you want to share in this space, and I would love to make sure that everyone hears it. I love you. Talk to you soon.
I can't wait to see what y'all come up with for that.
Me too.
Very excited.
Every breath, every moment, life beats in my chest, springs up from your head. Creation resumes with every color and every sound. Your love is calling. I love you with all of my heart. I love you with all of my mind. I love you with all of my strength. Let my life praise you. And I love you with all of my heart. I love you with all of my mind. I love you with all of my strength. I love you with everything, and I love you with all of my heart. I love you with all of my mind. I love you with all of my strength. I love you with everything. I love you with everything. I love you with Here I am, love. All I am, love. Here I am, love. I am yours. Here I am, love. All I am, love. Here I am, love. I am yours. Here I am, love. All I am, love. Here I am, love. I am yours.
Okay, did anyone else feel the heavy in the week this week? I know everyone that I have talked to so far this week has felt the heavy in the week, and I know that even just in the last 24 hours, there has been grief and loss and incredible pain in this community and this ocean that we are. Those waves have been mighty and high and stormy this week. And in the middle of that, we got to learn this song, which was sort of this beautiful, beautiful moment of reminder and refuge in all of that. And we could not bring it here for you today, and hope that it will remind you the way that it reminded me. Just that we're with you. We are with you in this. We are so with you, and we love you a lot.
Have you ever felt like nobody was there? Have you ever felt forgotten in the middle of nowhere? Have you ever felt like you could disappear? Like you could fall and no one would hear? Well, let that lonely feeling wash away. Maybe there's a reason to believe you'll be okay. 'Cause when you don't feel strong enough to stand, you can reach out your hand. And crashing through, when you need a friend to carry you, and when you're broken on the ground, you will be found. So let the sun come streaming in, 'cause you'll reach up and you'll rise again. Lift your head and look around, you will be found. You will be found.
Place where we don't have to feel unknown. Every time you call out, you're a little less alone. If you only say the word from across the silence, your voice is heard.
And oh, someone will come running, and I know they'll take you home. 'Cause even when the dark comes crashing through, when you need a friend to carry you, and when you're broken on the ground, you will be found. So let the sun come streaming in, 'cause you'll reach up and you'll rise again. Lift your head and look around, you will be found. You will be found. You will be found. You will be found. 'Cause even when the dark comes crashing through, when you need a friend to carry you, when you're broken on the ground, you will be found. So let the sun come streaming in, 'cause you'll reach up and you'll rise again. Lift your head and look around, you will be found.
Well, that's a word. A word has been preached already.
It's a real pretty song.
So gorgeous. So, Dear Evan Hansen, right?
Can we fit in here?
I think we've got this. Now, if this holds up
This
as
is
a
gonna
coffee
just
table,
dump
and
things all over us.
it's gonna be
fun.
awesome. I like your shirt.
Hi. Hey, yeah. I like my shirt too, Benjamin Cornelius.
I mean, he's not wrong.
He's not wrong.
And I would just like to point out,
Kate is foring it up by saying, I'm not going to wear the Verts Church merch,
wasn't
but
me
we
being
are.
a four.
Oh, really? It's adorable that you think that. I'm just kidding. No, I love you. Hi, good morning. Cheers. We're off to a good start.
I really feel like that's a good space to start having a discussion with one another. Hi. Sorry.
Hi.
It's just fun times, isn't it? Being locked away in our homes, away from each other, and meeting up virtually like this. I'm so glad you guys keep showing up. I keep thinking about that, how sad that would be if we tried to do virtual church and just no one showed up for it.
Yeah.
That would be so sad.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I hope that it feels good. I mean, that's why you're showing up, right? Because it feels good and helpful to you too. I hope it feels good and helpful to you to feel like we still have a way to be a community, and especially to get that music in our lives, right? So this morning we are doing things, we've structured the morning a little bit differently for the sermon time. Rather than give the typical sermon that is all written out, scripted, and we deliver it to you like a TED Talk. Here you go, here's this message we have. We've structured it a little bit differently for a few reasons. I mean, we're just creatively needing some branching out because it's the same thing week after week after week.
And it's harder to be creative and change things up in virtual church. Like we can't
As it
just,
turns out.
yeah, we can't just like have a morning where we just do spiritual practices in the space like we like to do at Sojourn, or just have a bunch of people come up and share, or gong hits.
Yeah, gong hits, like the Joys, Rachel and Vanessa Joy. They
Hi,
really
Rach. Hi, Vanessa.
miss gong
You
hits.
wish we were doing gong hits right
It
now.
is
huh?
their favorite thing that we do, but some other people like legitimately
Yeah,
love it.
and we miss being able to do those different things, and so
Communion, I really miss serving communion a lot.
yeah,
And
we
I
had
know
a
that-
teary moment around that this week.
Yeah, I know that several of you have thrown out the idea, and we've seen other churches do like sort of a virtual where you all take it together. And I don't know, for whatever reason, we've resisted that up until
Maybe
this
we're
point.
foring it up.
Maybe we are, but yeah, to your point.
Anyway, yeah, it's harder to be to have creative diversity to do anything different in this space. But you might have noticed that every single week since we started doing virtual church, we've been giving the sermons together, which has been, that in and of itself has been a creative branching out. We had never done that before in our lives, and then went for it for virtual church the first Sunday, and then just it worked, so we kept doing it, and that's creatively stretched us, and it's just been a cool energy to have both of us up here, and so we just really liked that. And then we thought, how could we do that differently at least? And what keeps coming up for us, and we've almost done it like 5 weeks
Yeah.
now. We're like this
Every
close,
Friday
and then
afternoon, we're like, maybe this Sunday, and then we bail on
then
it.
we panic because it's scarier. Because the point is, we did not script everything out. Instead, we just we have a topic, and we wrote out some questions and prompts. But we're just going to have a discussion with one another, a live discussion. We have not discussed this topic with one another ever in our lives. And so we're just going to do that live in front of all of you, kind of like if we were recording a podcast. But we're just going to go back and forth and discuss our thoughts in real time. So it'll be more raw, and we probably won't have as pretty of thoughts, but they'll be real. And then hopefully part of what that can do is leave more space for you to jump in. When we are really scripted, it's probably going to feel more like you're interrupting us, or there's not time to jump in and share what you're thinking. So I just think if we're in more discussion form, you're not interrupting us. You're not interrupting us because we are not
Like
scripted.
Mark
So-
Keys, you could say that all day long, brother, and
What
that's
did
not
he
an
do?
interruption.
What did he say?
It's a really good hair day. He's affirming both of us. This is really all we came on here for today. So we're good. And now, be brave. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. And
good.
Vanessa,
People
Vanessa
are-
just texted us and saying, God, I missed gong hits.
Okay, great. People
feels
are, the Together sermons. Thank you, Sammy and Michelle, for affirming that there's, that this is just, I don't know, this works for us. It sort of matches our Sojourn values and ethos and style. So.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's been cool. Okay. I think that's all I wanted to say about that. Oh, so just, as we're talking, something comes up for you, whether it's a question that you have for us personally. Oh, one of the things I wanted to say about doing this style, I was listening to a podcast this week, an interview with my idol, Sue Monk Kidd, and Dance of the Dissonant Daughter. That's why she's my idol. A brilliant novelist, and she just wrote the Book of Longings, and so she's been doing some interviews, and she said, and I've always loved that you can find the universal in the particular, right? So I love people sharing their stories because there's always universal truth in it. But she said it in a way that got me extra this week. She said, the deeper you dive into your personal story, the more you dig for your own very personal, very particular, the more universal you'll find there, the more theology, the more philosophical truths, universal realities, things that can move us and inspire us. The more we dig deep into our personal stories, the more particular you are. So as leaders, we kind of hesitate to get personal because it feels almost like you're putting on a show or making it about you. But when I heard her say that, I was like, no, making it about you, it brings out the universal truth even more than when you try to just kind of keep things on the surface. You try to teach in a universal way and you maybe don't hit on it as much, but if you go personal, you can get to those deeper truths. So that really hit me and touched me, and I feel like a discussion forum will get to the personal more. that's how I feel about it and want that to happen. So I'm hoping that we can just talk about our own personal lives and experiences and thoughts, and then we'll dig into that universal stuff. So that's my hope for the morning. We'll see how that goes. Who knows? But the point is that as you hear us sharing, please jump in. If you have a question about our experiences or our lives, don't hesitate. We're open books. And then if you have your own insight and thought that you want to share, please jump in with that as well. We will do our best to...
Monitor the comments.
Yes, Luke's Gilmore Girls, yes. But there's real coffee in it, unlike Gilmore Girls. For my GG friends. We'll do our best to monitor that and to interact. If it feels like we're missing something, hopefully these guys will catch it and yell at us. They've been given an invitation. I was going to say permission. I hate that word. An invitation to yell at us and call it out. So,
Okay, but that was too much. Scale it back. No, I'm just kidding.
Sammy.
Permission modified.
Yeah. Sammy said making it about you also grounds what you're talking about in reality. If it's overly abstract, then it doesn't feel as accessible. I love that. That's another way of saying what I was rambling. Yes, I like that a lot. All right. So, topic this morning. We had started this series talking all about
Was that
faith.
all your introduction to the introduction?
What?
Was that an introduction before you get to the introduction?
Yeah.
I'm just so happy right now because she always teases me for my verbose introductions.
I do. It's true.
I think it's projection.
Probably.
Anyways, go on.
Totally willing to
I'm
own
excited
that.
right now. Introduction number 2. Okay.
Introduction number 2. This will be very quick. At the beginning of this series on faith, we're in a series right now called Considering Faith, finding our way together. And so we've been talking about what is faith? What is the practice of faith? What does it look like to be people of faith right now? And one of the things that came up for us, and we've mentioned it, is that faith seems to be this thing that people turn to in times of adversity, in times of struggle. And so it felt appropriate, really, to do a series on faith in the middle of a world crisis, in the middle of pandemic. I know that I have been like, I need something to turn to and to be grounded in, to find guidance. And so that's what today is all about, of what does it look like to turn to your faith in times of adversity, and can you have a faith that is hope-filled, and what does that look like to have a hope-filled faith? And so to start off, so that intro, that second intro was very quick. There we go. We're going to go into the discussion. So, baby, I'm wondering if you could share with us personally, in your context of your faith now, so not looking back into like the religion of your youth or the faith tradition of your youth, but now how you think about faith and experience your faith. Very specifically because we've talked about these 2 lexical categories of noun and verb faith, and I'm wondering about that noun faith. So your beliefs about the world, your beliefs about God, your beliefs about Jesus, your beliefs about the Bible, we've been framing it as how you see the world, what you think about the world, what you believe, that part of your faith. Is there something in there that you have had an experience of turning to in time of adversity, in difficult times? Either now, like as you're thinking about pandemic, or a more personal story of something you've been through in these last years of being in that more progressive faith space. Is there something in this version of your faith that you turn to in hard times, or an experience you've had of leaning on that way of seeing the world to get you through?
I knew this question was coming, and yet the thing I was going to say suddenly doesn't feel like the thing I want to say now. So, yeah, I think as I think about some of my beliefs that I hold, and I kind of hold them all loosely, but some of the beliefs I hold now that have been an aid or an asset to this sort of experience of navigating these difficult times, or really any difficult time in the last number of years. I guess the thing that's coming up for me in this moment is this belief, and if you've been around Sojourn, this is no shock, but this belief that all people are loved children of God. So I know that on the surface level that might sound like, well, that sounds super obvious, and why is that? Okay, so here's why that I think is coming up for me is because prior to maybe my current state of beliefs and faith, I would have had maybe a different way of thinking about it, to where some people were more privileged or favored by God than others. And therefore, that caused me to interact with people differently, and it caused me to think about the world situations differently. But now, as I sort of have this deep conviction that all people, and when I say love child of God, again, that can sound a little bit Christianese, so maybe let me diffuse that a little bit. All people are connected. All people are part of the same thing. We're all one wind distracted by our different sails. We are, like, there's a shared humanity there. And I think why that's been bringing me hope lately is because when I think about, because I guess just knowing that my own self is driven so often by fear. I don't know. Kind of lost my train of thought there.
There's something in the belief that we're all connected and one that can diffuse fear, and fear is what comes up in adversity.
Maybe that's what I was going after. I don't know. There's something in the belief of that we're all connected that has been grounding me during this. Yeah. What about you? How about we go to you? Because I clearly lost my train of thought.
No, you're so good. I think that's a perfect example. I mean, I wonder if after I say this, you'll have more to say, because for me, what came up when I think about turning to my faith in adversity is that, you shared a belief that you have that we're all connected and we're all one, and how that gives you hope and is something you can turn to in times of adversity. And I was thinking about how the shift, every time I say that word, I think of your book and I laugh. But the shift from the way we were raised to now, for me, the biggest shift has been exactly what you named, the view of people. So I used to subscribe to the theology of original sin, so depravity, we're all just evil in the world and prone to it. And so that led to, like, what you were saying of, like, the few are favored, because then there's, if you're, like, saved or however you want, there's different ways of looking at it, but still, if there was a hierarchy, we're all worthless except for the way that God saves us, that's it. And then the biggest shift has been moving to a belief in inherent goodness, or what some people would call the theology of original blessing. But this idea of starting from the place of good. Some people will call it starting at the beginning, like Genesis 1 and God called it good, very, very good, everything, right? That's been the biggest shift for me, but what I've realized is that in that shift, it's not that one way of seeing the world is supported more by evidence than the other. You can look at the world and totally, it's not that I've now realized that conservative folks who teach the theology of original sin, I don't have data to back that up. Oh my God, that would be so, like, silly of me to try to claim that there's not evidence to back that up. And so that's why it's faith for me, and that's why that faith definition that we've been using over the past few weeks of the way I choose to see the world. I choose to start from that place and see the world that way, and it takes work on my part. It's not just an intellectual argument that switched and I realized, oh, that was dumb to think that. No, it still makes sense to see the world through the lens of original sin, and I just choose to see it differently. So coming to a place of looking at that belief in adversity, it takes action on my part. So it's like that belief merges the noun and verb part of faith for me. Like, I can't just sit in that belief and be like, I believe it, because there's too much evidence to the contrary. So it takes action on my part. So that's why that belief is helpful to come to in adversity for me, because it almost forces me to move, to make a move, to do something, whether it's reading prayers and affirmations to just make that belief sink in more, or going out and serving others to live that belief. It takes work on my part, and then when you move and you act, that does something in a time of adversity that lifts you out of the mire of doomsday. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Anyway, that was my thought.
Yeah. That's good.
Also, do you want to share more? Because I could just keep going. I have more thoughts on this. So do you want to say more?
No, let's move on. Maybe I'll grab that thought
Okay.
later.
Well, I wanted to say that for me personally, like if the question is how do you look to your faith in times of adversity, the truest, realist answer for me, the vulnerable answer for me is I really haven't figured that out yet since shifting in my faith. Because what we just talked about is all like really, there's something separate for me in that of beliefs and looking at the world and like our actions. I want to believe that we're all connected. I want to believe in inherent goodness. And that does something for me for sure. But since I just need to get more vulnerable and just share with you. I just need to say the truth. The truth is that since moving to progressive Christianity or moving out of what we grew up in, I have lost a lot of hope. I had way more personal hope. I may see the world in a more positive light now because I think the way that we think about things is much more positive now to believe in inherent goodness.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, shifting from a negative worldview to a positive one, I've actually lost a lot of the personal hope. And I've struggled with that a lot of like, I think I used to be a much more hope-filled person and go to my faith in hard times much more when we had that old paradigm than I do now. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it was easier, I think, for me to have that type of hope when I had a belief that there was some sort of big brother looking out for me, looking out for us, that would sort of help control and manipulate and interject if need be, the going-ons of Earth. When there was that sort of belief in that kind of deity, it was, it was easier to have a hope-filled faith. And it's just all going to work out because the string puller is going to eventually pull the right strings and the right things are going to happen. But since kind of walking away from that way of thinking about God, so for me now, God isn't this being that is up and or out there that occasionally, interacts with the world, although in ways we never fully could understand. Because I don't really have that anymore, that sort of, sometimes that lack of sense that somebody's looking out for me. It does. It trickles down into sometimes a bleaker projection of the future. There's no one going to come in at the last minute and save the day. That's a comforting belief to have.
Yeah.
And it comforted me for many years. And in the last, 5, 6, 7 years, that has kind of been absent. And so it's been harder. And maybe that's why I started with the thought of the belief of the connectedness of the shared humanity and the loved children of God. Because maybe there's something in that wants to fill that void. But I don't know if it works as well. I don't know. I kind of miss the days when I could just pray and send something up to God and be like, all right, well, now I can...
Whatever God does.
Now I can walk
God's
away from
choice.
that because I know that it's going to work out because I prayed about it. I don't know. There was a blissfulness in that naivete that I kind of miss.
Yeah. It's comforting to check out and trust another being. Now it's all on us.
Yeah.
There's a weird paradoxical thing there of we shifted to believing in humanity, basically. Like, I believe in humanity now. And yet, that sucks, because it's like, yes! Believing in humanity, that means it's on us, and we don't do a great job all the time. Did you have something on here?
Well, I'm just looking at, so Amanda says, when horrible things happen and people say, quote, God has a plan, or, quote, things happen for a reason, she says that turned me off of religion most of my life. And I really want to engage with that, but I think we had sort of maybe an idea to come address that later on in the talk, but I don't know, maybe we just go with what's happening right now. Because I think so for, again, Amanda said that people have said things like God has a plan or things happen for a reason, and that can be a real turnoff. And I completely agree, and also now I'm wondering if maybe I disagree with myself on that. Here's what I mean. So, because there is a sort of, the God has a plan or things are all going to work out. There's a version of that that maybe you could call, or I call, like a head in the sand sort of faith, where you're oblivious, you're ignoring what's actually going on, or you're not paying attention, you're not awake to maybe the injustices or the real pain or the real suffering that's going on. You get your head in your sand and you're just going to be like, well, it's all going to, God's got a plan, it's going to work out. And that is incredibly obnoxious, to Amanda's point. It turns people off from organized religion.
It can be harmful.
Yeah, it feels...
Denying someone's reality causes harm.
Feels very disconnected
Yeah.
to just chalk it up to, well, everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
And now also, I have been, I don't know, in the last couple months, even maybe it's related to this whole pandemic thing. I've been wondering, there's also a version of that maybe is not about head in the sand where you're sort of ignoring things, but it's more like your head has come out of the sand, so you could call it a sandy head rather than head in sand, a sandy head version of that.
You would do that. Yeah.
Which is that you actually are completely aware of the suffering, and you are tuned in to what's going on, and you're not ignoring that. And in light of all that, in the face of it, you are making a conscious choice to still believe and trust that, as Marcus Borg says, the whole is good. That there is, that whatever force or source is behind it, but in it, under it all, somehow is still good, is benevolent, as opposed to malevolent or indifferent. The trust that, no, like, there is still something good that is driving this whole thing. And so you're saying it not like ignoring it, but almost like staring it right into the face, being like, yes, that is horrible and awful, and ... I believe that somehow it'll be okay.
I am so with you, and I have to offer you this, because what I hear you saying, I'm going to say back to you what I hear you saying. I hear you saying there are folks who have a really positive outlook and look to their faith and say it's all going to be okay, even when it's not. And there are folks who practice spiritual bypassing and dismissing folks' realities.
That's real.
And you're saying the two can look so similar.
They can look similar.
That you can't distinguish between the two. I would offer they look very different. As a person who, my personal story is growing up my whole life with my reality dismissed, very traumatic realities dismissed, living in a home where literally the main, caregiver and the person that everything revolved around was dying, and everyone constantly giving those, what Amanda threw out as examples, those trite platitudes. Mm-hmm. And so there's this child watching the most important person in the world dying, and people are giving those platitudes. That is what it looks like when people are practicing spiritual bypassing and using positivity as a way to go around painful realities. I think it looks much different when what you're talking about, because I believe so much in what you're talking about. It's the Desmond Tutus, I have a million other examples. It's the light, heavy, light people. It's the folks who go the furthest, deepest into the dark pain of life, the activists, the people, the best peacemakers and change bringers in our world. You will find that they are the most joy-filled, hope-filled, light people, but it's because they go all the way into the darkness, so you won't hear those trite platitudes from them. You'll hear something else that sounds very light-filled and hope-filled, but it will sound different. You will not feel dismissed. If you feel dismissed, if you feel like pain and suffering have been dismissed, then that's head in sand.
That makes sense.
If you feel, wow, this person has experienced so much suffering and they see my soul, but they're so happy, that's sandy head, not head in sand. You know what I'm saying?
I do know what you're saying.
I think you can sniff those out. I have
Okay.
a sniffer
maybe
for that.
maybe that's what it is. Maybe you've got a unique sniffer to it. Because maybe it's just and if nothing else, just a reminder to me that if somebody were to give me what can feel like a platitude, to maybe not be so quick to dismiss it as simply that, because I just do not know what they have gone. Like, it's
Yeah.
very possible that what appears to me as a platitude for them was a hard-earned thing to come by. Like, they endured a lot, they overcame a lot, and on the other side of it all, they choose to be like, and somehow I think it's all going to work out. I think everything happens for a reason. Like, that can be so dismissive. I'm with you. And people who maybe choose to live by everything happens for a reason might, how do I say this? They might actually they might be onto something.
Yeah.
They might be onto something, if for no other reason than because when you live by the whole everything happens for a reason, it's forcing your brain to look for that reason. And you're looking for meaning, and you're looking for purpose, which can help you to sort of retroactively maybe make sense of things because you're expecting there to be a reason to. And I think that can be advantageous. And that's one of the things that was coming up for me this week as we were talking about this whole intersection of faith and hope, is how I'm actually discovering that my life goes better.
Wait, I want you to share that, but I need to respond to you really quick.
Okay, go ahead.
I
Plus, I
still
gotta re-say
think
that 'cause that's not what I want. Yeah.
totally cool. I still think I want to push back on that again, because I'm with you. I have seen it. I've come full circle myself. I'm now the person who believes that everything happens for a reason. I believe that in my soul. I believe in finding meaning in everything and putting meaning in everything. But I still believe that a person who's been through the darkness and that hard won, everything happens for a reason, they are not the people who will dismiss other people's pain. They're not going to be dismissive because it has been hard won.
Yeah.
They've lived that, and so they will say it differently, I feel like. And
Okay.
or like, not to always talk about Survivor, but recently we were watching a Survivor episode where a contestant had shared so much of his story of the pain and darkness that he was going through, and then was saying platitudes that sound trite in our world, and I didn't roll my eye. You know me, I'm always like a loud eye roller at stuff, and so I'd be like, oh God, this guy, you know? But because
You are a loud eye roller. I don't know how you can roll your eyes loudly, but
it's
you
true
figured it out.
though. You all know, you know that. You heard me say that, and you're like, yep, that's Kate. I had no eye roll. I had heart swells, tears, because he had shared so much of his story vulnerably. And I think that's the key difference right there, is that folks who have come full circle, because it's a paradox. There's power in positivity, and there's meaning in everything, and also some shit happens for no reason at all and is just awful. Both and, middle, always, third way. And I just think that sounds different than the folks who are actively practicing spiritual bypassing. Okay, anyway, what were you going to say?
I don't know. I mean, I do know. I'll go back to it, but I'm sitting with, like, Amber said that she truly does believe that everything happens for a reason for herself, but she tries not to use that with other people. I
Ooh,
think that's
can I that?
You did, yeah.
Thank you.
Um,
Yes, I'm so glad you said that. That'll preach.
Yeah, so that's one way to sort of hold that, and maybe a way that doesn't do that dismissing of other people. But yeah, I mean, I'll have to sit with that. Whether we can just chalk it up to you being a real good sniffer of the triteness, or whether there still might be ways in which those two can present themselves very similar. That even you might be fooled, but I don't know. I think you're not wrong, obviously, in terms of there is a way in which that can be said that does feel trite, and there's a way in which it doesn't.
Yeah, and Andy brought up that people.
That neighbor's really sneezing right now. Sorry.
Andy brought up a good point that people process pain differently as well, and that's absolutely, absolutely true. I just,
Okay, so the other thing I was going to say.
Oh, but I like this.
Go ahead.
However you want to process what Robert says, I think Robert has gold here. I think there are things that don't mean anything. Like I was just saying, there's just senseless, awful things. And then he says, but you could say they happen, and you can say that they happen for no reason, but even in those situations, I believe God isn't done. Good things can grow even in that kind of soil, but that isn't the reason they happened. I think that's so perfectly said. There's a difference between God made this bad thing happen so that he could then create some other good thing out of it. That's BS. I cannot, I will not ever. You do not look at me and say, oh, your mom died to save all these souls, or your mom died to create meaning in your life and make you strong. I almost flipped off the camera, but I won't. There might be kids watching. Like, no. And what Robert said is absolute gold. You all know that that part of my life has been fertile soil for all meaning and beauty and growth. So it's like kind of the same thing, but different.
Well, that's what is so remarkable to me, is it is very much the same thing, but different. It's like, is it a difference without a distinction? I don't know. Is it just the benefit of where you're at in the history of your life in terms of when those things become real and true? Does it all come down to how it gets leveraged maybe against other people, to go back to just the whole dismissing? I don't know. It's just fascinating.
I think it's just all of those things. Everything that's been said here. I think
Yeah.
it's just all of it. It's just all,
Yeah.
it all belongs. Did you have more to say? Because you still had a hanging thought.
The
Why don't
hanging
you
thought was simply, I was going to say, well, I started by saying my life goes better, and then I wanted to edit that. Edit it by saying my experience of life, or how I experience my life. It may not actually go better, but how I experience my life tends to be better when I embody this hope that the whole is good. When I put this trust that there is, not only is there more going on than just flesh and blood and pizza and paychecks, so the noun faith of that there's more than what we can see, and then also the sense of, and that more has a goodness to it. I feel like my experience of my own life is better, however you want to describe that, is better when I have that trust that the whole is good. When I have the trust that there somehow will be, I'm reminded of St. Paul saying that all things work together for good for God. Now, or all things work together for good. Way back in my head in sand days, again, that's offloading it off to some sort of divine being who's going to work it all out. And, I can just sort of, offload my anxiety to that being. But I feel like I'm more sandy head these days. But when I can still have this sense that somehow things will be okay. Julian of Norwich, all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well. Even when all the evidence in my eyes are to the contrary, when I still sort of try to embody that somehow all will be well, I feel like my life is better. And I don't know, maybe that's a crutch, maybe that's the opiate of the masses. I don't know, because I don't feel like it is, because I feel like it's on the other side.
Yeah.
I feel like it's more sandy head, where I'm like, no, I'm aware.
I would have accused you of that if you had said it 5 years ago,
Okay.
you think? We would have gotten in a fight about it.
Yeah.
But I believe you now, because I think you do have a sandy head now. You've pulled your head out of the sand, and I think you're on that hard one side. I think it's just like Dr. Brene Brown says, that she chooses to believe that people are doing the best they can. And when people question her about that, because there's so much evidence to the contrary, I love to argue that point, that people are not doing the best they can. But Brene says that she chooses to believe it, and when people question her on that, as they do, she shrugs her shoulders and goes, I don't know, I just know that I live a better life when I choose to believe that.
Yeah, okay, right, yes.
It's the same thing you're
Yes.
saying, right?
And to me, that's not nothing. That's not just a coping mechanism. That's not, I think that is the real stuff of what it means, I think, to be awake to your life and to have some sort of control over. You can't control hardly anything, but maybe what you can have a little bit of control over is that you choose to believe a particular thing, because it does actually change how you experience life.
Yeah. And it's not in a self-centered way. When Brene says that, I trust her to not mean, I'm just happier this way, because she's doing work. Like, her whole work is people. So if she says, my life is better when I choose to believe this, she means I serve humanity better when I choose to believe this. Is there anything we should interact with before I move on? Because I want to jump to something that's been off of this point, but I don't want to leave anyone behind.
Missy's story is so key. Yeah. Okay, that's what it's like in practice.
Should I read her comment? With each other. Perfect. That's all we need. You know what? We don't need to interact with it. If you're interacting with each other, that's all we want. That's the whole point of this entire thing that we're doing here. So good on you. Thank you for pastoring each other, ministering to each other. That makes me very, very happy. Okay, I love it. I'm going to move on a little bit. I read a quote this week by a woman named Erica Williams Simon, and she said this: "I'm so grateful for faith. I'm not talking about religion, but faith. The ability to believe in realities that you cannot see. It's how we fly away just for a moment while our bodies are still here. It's how, when life is too heavy and the world is too much, I still breathe." Can we talk about faith as being the ability to believe in realities that we cannot see for a moment? We kind of already have, but that's been more like theological or belief in humanity, because like we can't see inherent goodness. Well, I mean, you can, but it's like, you know, believing that most cars are red and then you see red cars all the time, confirmation bias, you believe it and then see it. But it is choosing to believe in something you don't see. But I mean more like, okay, this is super, super vulnerable for me. But part of my answer when you ask me, like, what happens when I try to go to faith in adversity for hope, is that I'm at this place in my life where I'm so fed up with the experience I have that moving to progressive faith means that, you know how we all grew up we all have our stories. If you grew up in any sort of conservative context, in any sort of fundamentalist context, religious context, you had things you had to hide. Things that you thought inside your head, things about your identity and who you are that you had to hide. I don't want to be weepy about this. I feel that way in progressive world. And I know that's a big duh. We all know that, like, you don't just become progressive and be perfect people, but it's sad to me that the whole point of moving to progressive space is to have more space and to be whole. Like, wholeness is our mission. And I'm not saying this, I can sound overly critical sometimes, you guys. We'll talk about that in a minute when we get to the whole optimism, pessimism thing. But I'm not, like, angry at church, and it's not a sojo thing at all, but it is a human, we still have an inability to not make flash judgments. So I have things that I believe that if I say I believe this, I will fear that you will connect it to something else. So I won't say I believe in this, because you'll think that I also believe in all these other things. And so I'm too scared in progressive circles to talk about it. Does that make sense?
I think so.
So, like, and that's super connected to this whole faith and adversity thing, because for me, the faith that I miss, when I admitted that when I moved to progressive I lost hope, is because I grew up with a terminally ill parent, and so our whole conversation was always around hope. It was always, see you in heaven. Heaven was such a real reality for me. Seeing people, when we all die, coming back together and being together again after death, that was so real and provided so much actual hope. And of course, as we just talked about, there's the whole story of, you know, the spiritual bypassing in that. But now that I'm like full circle around the other side of that, where, you know, I've been that fiery advocate for we have to grieve, we have to name the pain, we have to name what's wrong, I still want to be able to say things like, I'm going to see my mom again someday, or I believe in realities that we don't see but that are here. I believe in, you know, spiritual friends that we have from the time that we're small children that are with us. You might call them angels or spirit guides. I am obsessed with the work of Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross and how she talks about the experience of what happens to us when we die, and she uses the experiences that people have when they come back from a near-death or actual death and coming back to life experience. I believe in all that crap, and I feel like I'm not supposed to say it in progressive space. And the point in me sharing that is that makes it so I can't be hope-filled, because that's what brings me hope. But if I can't live it and talk about it, then I'm not going to feel the hope from it. You know what I mean? Sorry, I'm getting weepy. I've never shared that. I've never even told you that before. But it feels like in progressive space you're not allowed to believe in an afterlife or Because then you'll think I believe in some white dude God sitting on a throne, and then you'll
Pearly
think I believe in
gates,
hell, and then
yeah.
you'll think I believe in, and
Yeah.
on and on and on and on. And so it's scary, and so then I just don't say anything at all.
Yeah, we've de-enchanted the world so much in our move out of conservative Christianity
Thank you. Yes, that.
that we've feels like we've married this progressive Christianity. We've mapped onto it so tightly to sort of this rational, post-Enlightenment sort of scientific worldview that has, just de-enchanted. We've taken a lot of for good reasons, I think we've laid aside some of the metaphysics of our old religious heritage, but maybe we drained that bathtub too much. And
Yeah, hearing you say that is actually really healing for me. And it brings up another reason why I'm so insecure about it is because I already come to this space as a progressive faith leader. We talk about this all the time, how people look at you and I and they say, Colby has the head, Kate has the heart. And so I always feel like I'm not the intellectual one. I'm not the smart one. And so if I start talking about spirit guides and the afterlife, I feel that that's attached to I'm not intellectual. And so I'm not going to give that card away, even though I did just give that card away to everyone. But I've been holding it so tightly because I need to prove that I am still an intellectual. But we have to stop doing that. We have to start moving into the both and.
It's painful to hear you say that, and yet I acknowledge that it makes a ton of sense. That there would be some fear and anxiety around acknowledging a belief in mystical, mystery, metaphysics, enchant, whatever it is, that would then revoke your reasonable thinker card. It would somehow revoke your smart card.
Yeah.
That is so, I think, entirely unfair and dismissive of virtually every human who has lived prior to the 1500s. Mm-hmm. Meaning, like, before we had the scientific method, before we had reason and all that thing, people just lived really, really smart, real intelligent lives, and held on to some sort of sense that there is more than what's going on. Yep. Every great spiritual teacher, whatever a person who's in a progressive circle might think about the Gospels and the New Testament, that's fine. I'm going to ignore you for a second. Just look at the Gospels and look at the life of Jesus, whether it's historical or not. I don't care. I'm setting it aside. Read the life of Jesus. That person, if we submit that he was at least an enlightened spiritual teacher on some level, mm-hmm. he very much bought into some sort of enchanted view of the world.
Yeah. And all the mystics.
The mystics.
Yeah. All my favorite heroes of the faith, Thomas Merton, they're all intellectuals.
Yeah. And I don't think it's fair for us to sort of retroactively just be dismiss. They were just less smart and less aware.
Less evolved.
Yes.
That was a long time ago.
We now have incredible technology. This is great. This doesn't mean that we are smarter and more intelligent and can just sort of dismissively say, therefore, there's nothing beyond this.
Laura Shepard said that to me being progressive is about holding on to beliefs loosely. So that means accepting that we don't all believe the same thing. And exactly, and she says more, so read her comment, but exactly, and I think that's the thing is that even when we're in progressive spaces, we mess up and we create cultures and communities that still make some of the past mistakes, just in different ways, and I guess I'm just ready to stop doing that. And so I can sound blamey and overly critical, so I'm going to look at myself in the mirror and say, that's part of me sharing this, is it's taking the responsibility and saying, I want to start creating a new culture. If I'm so afraid of saying these things and I just keep doing that, it's just going to perpetuate the culture. But now I've told you guys, cards are on the table, it's all been aired, and so now we can start and I truly believe that Sojo is a better culture and progressive space with that anyway. Yeah. It's more my outside of Sojo experience, but it's affected how I am with you guys, because I've seen it out there so much. I'm too scared in here, and I know that you guys are all safe, clearly, even just by your comments from this. So anyway. Sorry, I'm really making it about me, but I'll go back to the Sumunk kid thing. Yeah. I know, I said that was a thing, and now I'm feeling insecure about it anyway. Yeah.
All right, we should probably wrap this up.
We wrap? Okay, is it time? I have so many more things I want to talk about, but let's wrap. Okay. Prayer, meditation?
Oh, I just meant, did you have one, want to get to one last thing?
Oh, one last thought. Yeah, okay. I thought you meant wrap, done. Okay. Yeah, I mean, we did a lot with that whole optimism, like sometimes people are optimistic and that can look like spiritual bypassing, and we were just dissecting that a bunch. Can we dig into the other side of it a little bit? I think I've been sharing so much of me, but whatever. I have been my whole life branded as a pessimist, and on
Including by me.
I love you.
Including by me. In case that got uncatched.
Yeah, and then one day, 2 years ago, I was sitting in my therapist's office, and I was lamenting this experience of feeling like I get stuck in situations where the same thing is happening, like the same negative experience. Like, what is wrong with me? And my therapist just casually and flippantly said, well, it's because you're such an optimist. And it was like the biggest effing record scratch of my life. Like, I mean, like I think I heard an actual record scratch, like a spiritual, metaphysical record scratch. Like God was like, you know? And and sure, yeah, you know me, I don't know the things.
No, you were great. I was just
Oh,
envisioning
okay.
God as like dead mouse.
And yeah, that changed the course of everything for me, because what she went on to explain is, yeah, there can be this negative aspect if I get stuck in spaces where things are wrong, but she's like, the reason why is because you are so open to the possibility of transformation. Not just open to it, you believe so wholeheartedly that things can change. And that's why you're constantly calling out what's wrong. And of course, I'll be the first to admit that has got me in trouble, that has ruined relationships, that can be too much. Absolutely. My obsessive need to call out what's wrong and to make a big deal out of it. Absolutely. It can go the wrong way. But the point is that being a person who sees what's wrong and calls that out, being a person who's like, no, guys, like, there's something going on here that's not right, or we need to stop and grieve this, that's not being a pessimist. That's believing that if you call what's wrong, you can move through it. That's that open to transformation. And I was thinking about how you define faith as a posture of openness to the belief that transformation is possible. And that's exactly what my therapist was like. That's what you do. You constantly believe that transformation is possible. And yet in our world, culturally, we've labeled that being pessimistic. And the people who are like, oh, well, all good here, nothing to see, are the optimists. And nothing to see here, that's not optimism. That's, no. So anyway. That's denial. That's spiritual bypassing. That's head in the sand, you know, to go back to that again. Anyway. So.
Yeah, I wonder if we're just struggling for lacking the words or the right kind of. Are we just conflating and misusing words to? Yeah, maybe there's just other words that we need rather than optimism and pessimism to really sort of get at this, because I still think there is, like, pessimism is a thing, right? So that is trying to name some sort of way in which we respond to stimuli around us. Like there is a spectrum of pessimism and optimism, and it's attempting to describe some sort of phenomenon.
Mm-hmm.
And what I hear you saying is that there's another spectrum of things that describe a different type of phenomenon, that when you're engaging with that, people are borrowing, myself included, are borrowing this word pessimism and using it here. And maybe it's just it's a misuse of that term. I don't know.
I think so. I think like everything, we went a little haywire with the terms and went overboard. And I just think a pessimist is a person who doesn't believe in change, who's like, we're all screwed, so I'm doing nothing. That's pessimism. Oh, okay, yeah.
Pessimism looks like non-engagement.
Yeah, it looks like non-engagement. Like doomsday, we're all going to hell. Oh, Karen was saying everyone's going to hell. The world is going to hell in a handbasket, so I'm out. I check out. That's head in sand is pessimism. That's not doing something, not showing up. But calling out what's wrong is no.
Yeah.
Anyway, oh crap, I had something else I was going to say about
So
that.
where then? Okay. So
Oh, I was going to read a cool quote.
go ahead.
So there's a Czech activist who he was deeply involved in all things human rights. His name was Václav Havel, I think is how you say his name. I probably screwed that up. But he said, optimism is the belief that things are going to turn out as you like, which I like that definition, as opposed to hope. So he contrasts optimism and hope, which Nelson Mandela has done that a lot too, and I really like that contrast. There's a difference between optimism and hope, maybe, and we use them interchangeably when we shouldn't. But he says optimism is the belief that things are going to turn out as you like, as opposed to hope, which is when you are thoroughly convinced that something is moral and right and just, and therefore you fight regardless of the consequences. In that sense, I'm full of hope, but in no way optimistic. I just love that contrast. It's like, that's what I'm talking about all the
Yeah.
people I see out there in the
That
world who
feels
are
good.
in it, in the darkness, in the thick of it,
Yeah.
and yet have that lightness and joy about them that's different than being optimistic.
Yeah, I like that. Just having it again, going back to just a different. We're naming a different phenomenon when we're talking about hope than we are talking about pessimism and optimism, and the conflation can get confusing. Yeah, because I think like there are sort of day-to-day realities where something comes up and some people just more naturally go towards, well, this isn't going to work out. They might catastrophize, or they might just assume that the worst thing is always going to happen. And some people might just more naturally gravitate towards, I don't know, somehow it's just going to work out. I don't know. I just believe it's going to work out. And to me, that feels like the realm of optimism, pessimism, where those can be helpful terms and spectrums to talk about. But I think this other engagement is maybe where the idea of hope fits a little bit better.
Yeah.
I'll have to keep thinking about that.
Yeah. I'm like dying. I want to read every comment over here. Hopefully it lets me when I go back.
It will after when we're done.
When it resets, I'll be able to go back through and
Optimism and pessimism feel like feelings to me, whereas hope is like
an action.
a way of being, a choice.
Can they hear her? Karen said she feels like, Karen said she feels like optimism and pessimism feel like feelings, whereas hope feels like an action. And oh my God, I love that. In fact, I have written here, faith that gives us hope always involves some kind of action. It's not sitting back. So I love that.
Yeah, and that sort of faith, that sort of hope, to me is tapping into something deeper than just the whims of circumstance. So the whims of circumstance are when life just presents itself as one way or the other, and we respond to it, and maybe that's where the optimism, pessimism, Pepto-Bismol comes in handy. But the deeper sort of holding on to something regardless of how circumstances appear or feel, I think that's where the faith, hope, that's where that sort of phenomena, I think, exists. I don't know, like, because sometimes I can have this real sort of optimistic, like I can oftentimes be very head in sand as it relates to just the casual sort of maybe smaller things in life. So if we go on a road trip, you're going to be more naturally inclined to think of all the ways that might go wrong with our kids in the car, and I might be more inclined to just be like, no, it will be fine. This is a spectrum that doesn't, I don't think, impact the sort of hope, trust, like getting at the deeper, choosing to believe in things that are not impacted by feelings and circumstance.
Plus, I'll be the one prepared for those kids when everything goes wrong.
Yeah.
All right, anything else you want to say on this topic
I
for
don't
now?
think, have we said things about this topic? Yes.
I sure think so.
Good.
Yep. It's good.
Optimistic about it. It sounds like you maybe feel pessimistic.
I feel great about it. I feel
Karen
great.
just said, I feel optimistic about the conversation, and Colby feels pessimistic about it.
I
That's
think
hilarious.
it was great. People seemed to really engage, which is what we wanted.
Discussion style, not script, not planning, is not your style. It's not your most
Me?
comfortable. Yeah.
No, not at all. No.
So, I think that's
No.
what's happening.
Dialogues are inferior to monologues in my world. Thought we were being vulnerable and sharing about
We're
our-
being vulnerable, real vulnerable,
just kidding.
apparently.
I love conversations. I'm just not very good at them. Okay.
Sweet.
All right.
We all just joined you. Was it time?
Yes,
It's time.
please. I love it. Do we want to end in some sort of breathwork meditation space, or just bye? We're out.
Totally your call.
Let's take a minute. Let's take a minute. As we close this time together, and we're thinking about showing up to our beliefs about our world and each other and God, and how we can come to those in times of adversity. I hope that today you can walk away. This is my benediction for you. This is my hope for you. I hope you can walk away from this conversation with simply this: an opening, an invitation, permission, if you will. Sometimes we still need permission. Sometimes we're just little children inside who need the principal to say, "You have my permission." So may we all just walk away with permission to look at our beliefs, and the ones that feel good and like they might do something for us. All other people's opinions be damned. What everyone else agrees with be damned. May we sit in those beliefs and let ourselves feel hope in them. I'm going to go home and think about my spirit guide and feel hopeful in that. And I'm going to go home and think about seeing my mom again someday, walking with her in some ethereal rose garden, and I'm going to let myself feel hopeful in that. And that's my wish for you too. Not like me, not the way I do it, but whatever that looks like for you. I pray that for you. That in your own home, in your own life, whatever you believe about the world, whatever you believe about God, about love, about Jesus, about the Bible, about angels, about spirits, about heaven, about death, about resurrection, I pray you feel fully open to it, allowing yourself to own it as part of who you are and how you were meant to live on planet Earth, and how you were meant to be a hope-filled change bringer. I love you, and I'm praying that over you today. Amen.
This was a song that, literally on election night, 3.5, 4 years ago, came unbidden in my memory, just kind of popped up. A song from my youth, maybe a song from your youth, if you grew up in a similar tradition. And it was just one of those ones that, I don't know, in that moment, I was just totally able to reclaim, and it just spoke to me in that moment of need, that very dark place I was in on that night, and a lot of us were in, and we're still in that dark place. We're still terrorized by our leadership, and we're still looking for hope. And I hope that this song does that for you today. Be still, my soul, for God is on your side. Hold up with hope your heavy grief and pain. Leave it with God to order and provide. In every change, she faithful will remain. Be still, my soul, your quiet, holy friend. Through painful ways leads to a joyful end.
Be still, my soul, for God will undertake to hold the future as she has the past. Your hope, your confidence, let nothing shake. Oh, now mysterious shall be bright at last. Be still, my soul, the wind, still know that voice that calmed, that when he dwelt below. Be still, my soul, when light seems to depart, and all is darkened in the veil of tears. Then will you better know her love, her heart, who comes to soothe your sorrows and your fears. Be still, my soul, God surely will repay from her own fullness all life takes away.
Wow, thanks for singing that. I haven't heard that in years. Be still, my soul. Not because there is some magical being out there that's going to fix everything. I don't know. Things may not get fixed, or not fixed in the way that we would think they would. But maybe that's not the invitation of the be still and know that I am God. Maybe it's not. So therefore, don't worry because I've got it all figured out. Maybe that's not the invitation. Maybe it's this deeper, calmer, quieter hope. That even in the face of all this pain and this suffering, there is somehow a hope that all shall be well. That all shall be well.
All manner of things shall be well.
Is there any house notes?
Yes,
House notes?
there is.
Yes, that's what okay.
Couple
I
house
knew there was
notes.
something.
Just a reminder, we do still have funds for the helping grants. I know that the economic effects of all of this are continuing to all over us all. Yep, they're continuing to continue. Yep, that's truth. So if you find yourself in struggle, that is still available. Please reach out to us. We want to help, and it is there for that. And if you would like to donate toward that cause, you can do so at sojourngrace.com/donate, and there is a tab for helping grants. You will see that on your screen in the corner at the top. And you can also donate toward that by buying Virch merch.
Birch Church
Which
merch.
these dorks are all wearing theirs right now. And what else did I want to say? Oh, also on our website, which I don't know
What the link
address
is?
to.
I don't either.
I'll blast the link out again. If you got our newsletter, you already saw, but I will put the link in the Sojourn Sanctuary and blast that out again. But we are going to start trying to connect more during the week, so more than just here on Sundays. And that'll look like some different things showing up at your house. So you can fill out a form to give us your home address, and there's stuff like hours that you do not want to be disturbed, and we will always alert you first before we just show up on your doorstep. But we need to try to connect more, even though we have to be socially distant. So we'll send out that form. And then, yeah, parents, if you have kiddos and they want to share anything, like I said earlier, in the kid moment, please get that to me, and I'll send out a little thing about that later this week too. So.
Do you want the link?
Oh, sure, yeah.
Complicated. sojourngrace.com/socially-distant-connection.
Yeah,
It's
that's
easy to
hard.
type that out in the thing.
SDC, socially distant connection.
We'll
The
put that
SDC
on.
and
We'll
NBC.
put that on the interwebs. All right. Benediction time?
Benediction time.
Someone say it.
We should wait till someone says it in the comments.
Okay.
But then there'll be like a 20-second delay. I don't care. We'll wait for it.
I'm watching.
We're gonna follow you.
So far, we just got house notes. House notes is not helpful. Y'all can do better.
Come on. Oh, God.
And we gotta wait for someone to do the be kind as well.
It's
So if
coming.
one person needs to do.
Yeah, that's not
right.
helpful.
It's all right. We'll wait.
Oh my gosh, this is so suspenseful.
Someone's gonna roll. Oh wait.
Yay!
Thanks,
Lord,
Laura.
be brave. Because you're a child of God. This is so awkward.
Hopefully someone anticipated that they should jump to the next one.
We need the next line.
Come on, who's got it? Nope.
No, not be strong. Be kind.
Y'all are going rogue now with the benediction.
Because so is everyone else.
That worked out really well.
That was something.
That's our smoothest activity yet.
All sorts of